Good afternoon, everyone, dear audience, dear distinguished panelists. I'm happy to welcome you all to today's panel on media integration and bias reporting on immigration. As Turkey Research Foundation, we organized this panel as a part of a series of panels funded by European Union. Actually, that's a European Union project, and we organized this in coordination with Plus Institute from Astoria. My name is Muhammed Çağrı Bilir from University of Leeds. I'm working there as a researcher in politics and international studies department. Today we're going to discuss how media affect integration process of immigrants, especially particularly in European states. As we all know, media continues to shape how we understand and engage with the world, and that's why when we look at this critical importance of media in our life, it's of course affect the life of immigrants, and that's it. In this project, as you know, we particularly focus on the young immigrants in Europe and all over the world as well, and we are focusing on their experiences, daily experiences, and how they face some difficulties from different range of areas of their daily lives. So we are joined today by two distinguished scholars whose research delves into complexities of identity, political participation, and social inclusion within immigrant communities. They bring invaluable perspectives on how media representation and bias can impact the integration of immigrant youth and shape broader social attitudes. Let me introduce our first panelist, Dr. Nadia Lahtili. She is a political researcher with a PhD in political science and public administration. Her expertise lies in participatory democracy, civic engagement, and integration studies, with a particular focus on the Muslim diaspora and immigration communities. Her current research explores how media literacy affects social participation, particularly among immigrant youth. Her work shed light on how these young individuals navigate their identities within the complex landscape of media narratives and public opinion. Our second panelist is Dr. Caner Şimşek. He is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Institute of Political Science at the University of Münster. He is holding a dual PhD in political science and social data analytics from Pennsylvania State University. Dr. Şimşek's research explores the authoritarianism, polarization, and identity politics. I think his work is especially relevant for understanding how media can both support and hinder the integration of immigrant youth, as it influences identity formation, political behavior, and social dynamics. If you want, we can start our panel now. I will ask two questions for each panelist. In the first round, we'll start with the first questions. I would like to give the floor to Nadia Lahtili with the question. My question is, Dr. Lahtili, considering your research on the Muslim diaspora, how do you see media literacy influencing the identity formation and social integration of young immigrants in the face of biased reporting?
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for giving me the floor. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share my perspectives on this important and timely topic. Also, I would like to thank and convey my appreciation to the Turkish Research Foundation and Plus Institute for highlighting critical issues surrounding youth immigration and integration. And I hope through this session on the issue of technology and the potential impact on the integration of immigrant youth, we can answer together the question of how media and media literacy education programs can enhance the visibility and the social participation of youth migrants. Well, first of all, I'd like to frame this question as how we can improve the representation and amplify the voices of immigrants. Uh, as you know, migrants
Luckily, now problem. We couldn't hear your voice now. I think it's a technical issue. Could you check your microphone or you know?
The headphones.
Without headphones, I think it's better.
Okay.
Now it's.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
All right. I'm sorry about this technical issue. As I was saying, I hope that through this session on the issue of technology and the potential impacts on the integration of immigrant youth, we can answer the question of how we can, or how can media literacy and media literacy education programs ability of immigrant youth and their social participation. Uh, First of all, I'd like to frame this question as how we can improve the representation and amplify the voices of immigrant youth through digital tools. And as we know, migrants are seen as non-mainstream demographics, and they often face systemic or structural barriers to full participation and recognition in their host communities. And some of these barriers include limited representation in decision-making process, reduced access to civic engagement opportunities, as well as their experiences of social marginalization. And I believe that in this context, we can consider the role of media literacy and education programs as a bridge to social participation and inclusion. So rather than viewing immigrants and immigrant youth in particular through a deficit lens, we must recognize their unique perspectives, their cultural capital, as well as the potential contributions to their host communities. And I also think that the challenge here lies not only in making them visible in society, but also in dismantling the barriers that prevent their full social participation and create inclusive spaces where their voices can be heard and valued. And because of this, I believe that the question we are trying to address entails not only discussions about digital platforms and innovation in media literacy, but the question itself reflects something much more profound, which is about empowerment, inclusion, and diversity. And this argument actually aligns with the broader recognition that media literacy is not just an individual skill, but it is a social imperative in an era of sensitive global interconnectedness. And as young migrants navigate this transition to new cultural paradigms, so learning how to use technology and media literacy skills can serve as a transformative tool, empowering them to become active and informed to the civic fabric of their host communities. And this, if we look specifically into media literacy education, I think that the significance of media literacy education programs in supporting the integration and empowerment of immigrant youth has become more and more manifest as modern societies experience this growing demographic diversity. I have been actually talking about media literacy and media literacy education program because this is something I'm currently searching. And before we get more into different aspects of this issue, I would like to briefly provide the conceptual framework and define what we mean by media literacy. So according to the National Association of Media Literacy Education, media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act using all forms of communication. So, in other words, media literacy is the ability to navigate within our complex and dynamic media landscape. The EU also defines media literacy as the skills, knowledge, and understanding that allow citizens to use media effectively and safely. So, in order to enable citizens to access information and to use, critically assess, and create media content responsibly and safely, citizens need to possess advanced media literacy skills. And media literacy should not be limited to learning about tools and technologies, but should aim to equip citizens with the critical thinking skills required to exercise judgment, analyze complex realities, and recognize the difference between opinion and fact. There's also this another like definition which I find insightful. It's actually provided by the Dutch Council for Culture, describing media literacy as the whole of knowledge, skills, and mentality with which citizens can consciously, critically, and actively engage in a complex, changeable, and fundamentally mediatized world. So I find this definition to emphasize three important aspects, which are knowledge, skills, and mindset, and therefore media literacy goes beyond basic technical skills young migrants can acquire. This means that to be truly media literate, especially in host societies, these people, I mean, migrants or young migrants, need, of course, knowledge of how media works and how information is created, distributed, and manipulated. They need skills to effectively examine, evaluate, and create media messages across different platforms. But more importantly, they also need to acquire mentality or attitude that will encourage a critical approach to engage with media in host societies. So, media literacy requires individuals not only to be aware, but also to approach media with critical thinking and mindset. And this means that people need to recognize biases, understand the purpose behind media messages, and question their validity and impact. So, the idea here is to understand that media literacy is a mindful practice that equips young migrants with the skills to become aware of their environment and reflect on the meaning of the messages and to be able to make informed decisions that are consistent with their values. It's also important to acknowledge that the experiences we engage with through media and the content we consume, be it in the form of information or images or messages, they shape our opinion, beliefs, behavior, values, but also our identity. So, for example, the visual representations in the case of the refugee crisis shaped to a large extent public opinion, and opinions about refugees were generally formed based on the visual representations in the media, including TV and social media. And research argues that through consuming stereotypical new images or news images, most of us have a strong visual sense of what a refugee or a migrant looks like. And that dominant visual culture often stresses refugees as others and objectifies them. And I think that this objectification tends to dismiss their unique circumstances, be it political, historical, or cultural. So, if we look at the depiction of migrants and refugees in media and political discourse, we can see that these individuals are often depicted through various lenses. So, common depictions include portraying migrants as security concerns and associating them with crimes or terrorism. And this representation causes public fear and can lead to stricter public policies on immigration, border control, and surveillance. Migrants are also portrayed as economic burdens, competing for employment and public resources. So these people are seen here as taking jobs and draining public services. Some narratives emphasize that immigrants and refugees are cultural dangers, so describing them as failing to blend or integrate in host societies, or people who come with different cultural values and threaten the national identity and local norms and values of the host societies. On the other hand, migrants and refugees might be depicted as victims in need of protection, which urges humanitarian help but risks turning these people into passive receivers. A more positive depiction, on the other hand, often shows migrants as economic contributors, as was the case, for example, in post-World War II Europe, where migrants coming mainly from Africa and Turkey contributed significantly to the reconstruction of economic. So, immigrant youth are often portrayed in these stereotypical lenses as dependent, insecure, or in need of constant assistance, or receivers of help rather than voices with ideas and stories. And they often encounter barriers to social participation due to external factors, including cultural misunderstandings, language differences, and unfamiliarity with social norms. So these challenges can lead to isolation, misunderstanding, and even it can lead to marginalization. So we have to add to this that media environments in host communities, as highlighted earlier, may portray young migrants in ways that reinforce stereotypes or fuel anti-immigrant sentiments, and this can further complicate migrants' integration. And I see that these dominant narratives have an impact that goes beyond media representation and influences public policies in host societies. So, as I stated earlier, when politicians and the media constantly depict young migrants as burdens or risks, these opinions shape public perception and can lead to restrictive policies. And so, rather than empowering young migrants, such policies often stress aspects of control, of protection, and monitoring. And this reinforces a cycle in which migrants and migrant youth in particular are viewed through a deficit lens. So, this pattern underlines the necessity to re examine how migrant youth are depicted, as well as the need for media literacy programs that can empower these people to question stereotypes, participate in public discourse, and help influence the narratives that surround them. Um, for many young migrants and refugees, these, I would say, negative portrayals create a sense of pressure to counter the dominant stereotypes. So this goes actually uh, beyond simply stating a like a good example. So rather, migrants feel forced to respond to assumptions that frame them as different from or in conflict with the values of their host societies. And these people often find themselves in a sensitive position, trying to strike a balance between keeping their own cultural identities and adapting to the norms and expectations of the host societies. There's actually this study done by Gorashi on racism and the ungrateful other in the Netherlands, in which she asserts that migrants often face the expectation to prove themselves as good refugees to counteract these persistent, often unwelcoming perceptions within their host communities. In addition to this, there is also the social political environment that reinforces this pressure on youth migrants by clustering them into stereotypes that they feel obliged to disprove. So I think that without media literacy skills, youth migrants struggle to tell what's real, where they belong, and how they can participate. So instead of seeing themselves as part of the community, they're often left feeling outsiders, trapped in labels. And I think that this narrow perspective might deprive migrants of a feeling of agency, making it difficult for them to believe that they play a part in creating the society around them. But with media literacy education, we believe that these young people can actually step out of those stereotypes, share their stories, and voice their perspectives and take part in the environment around them. So I think I will stop here and
It's done, right?
yes. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
there's, of course, there are other ideas I can add to my
Sure.
discussion. Um, for example, I found like interesting research talking about the like media literacy and how it can help the integration of young migrants. For example, there was this study on critical media literacy as a key to participation for young migrants, where it was argued that hostile media depictions impact both how young migrants relate to their countries of origin and their sense of belonging in their new homes or host communities. And the surrounding visual culture, which is frequently, as I said, narrow, negative, and stereotypical, might make it difficult for young migrants to develop strong connections with their peers and their society as a whole. And this stresses the importance of critical media literacy, which provides migrants with the ability to reject misinformation and advocate for their identities on their own terms. So young migrants can actually use critical media skills to learn about, to challenge, but also to change the dominant narratives and build a more inclusive perspective of their role in society. And as we all know, migrants often face unique challenges in transitioning and adapting to foreign sociocultural environments. So, for young migrants, critical awareness is key to engage in the new cultural and media environments. And in this context, media literacy skills become necessary for them to negotiate their place within their host societies and to maintain connections with their own culture. So these individuals, when they are equipped with media literacy skills and benefit from education programs, they can participate actively in society. They can advocate for their perspectives, and they can also build strong connections within their communities. And this, in turn, supports their social integration and nurtures a sense of agency as they navigate new cultural environment. And in this way, we can see that media literacy is more than just a technical skill. It is a key that opens the door to active social participation. And for immigrant youth, media literacy programs offer more than know how. They provide tools to think critically about information and to engage in civic conversations about their communities. So, for young migrants, media literacy is not only about consuming media, let's say safely, but it's also about bridging cultural divides and finding a voice within their host communities. And through education, young migrants can be empowered, and they can engage actively in their own societies and shape their own identities and social environments.
Thank you, Nadia. Especially your focus on the conceptualization of media literacy. Not take it as a just like learning action. It is not. It's actually mostly about accessing all kind of communication in their host societies, because they need to examine, evaluate the in other words, effectively engage with all kind of news, all kind of knowledge, data happening around them. And with this way, they could easily become part of those societies, and they can speak their languages and also have knowledge on detailed issues happening around them from diverging issue areas. And maybe this will help, managing and preempting the potential threats coming from ongoing narratives in media about immigrants, because these kind of narratives may lead to racism, hate crimes, ethnic and religion-based discrimination. They should be ready for all these kind of threats in this new life in those countries. That's why this media literacy, not just a technical term, also is a part of key part of their integration process in this their new life. I guess. Thank you very much. It was quite insightful
Exactly.
for us. Now
Yes,
we
and
can. Yeah,
I would
please.
like to also add that when we look at the question of how media literacy can support the social inclusion, empowerment, and the agency of immigrant youth, adding to what you have stated, we also need to consider the complex role of media literacy as a tool not only for understanding media content, but also for developing active and meaningful social participation among immigrant youth. And when we frame media literacy education within the context of empowerment and inclusion, media literacy becomes, as we agreed, a powerful tool that goes beyond simply teaching young migrants how to use technology, but it's also about giving them the keys to active participation in society. And I think for this to happen, there needs to be a paradigm shift from approaching young migrants as passive receivers or beneficiaries to recognizing them as engaged and gifted actors in this process. So I think that adopting this approach or this understanding in the context of immigration and integration of youth migrants, um, uh, we are sending an important message to policymakers and to young migrants themselves. It conveys that that we recognize their unique strengths and perspectives, and we trust them with the tools to navigate and contribute to their environments. And in this light, media literacy education becomes, as I said, the gateway not just to information access, but to a like a deeper sense of belonging.
Hey, your ideas just remind me an analogy from IR, blind man and an elephant analogy. Janar maybe knows it. It's mostly about if you just imagine some blind man in a room and there's a elephant there, and uh, these blind men, when they touch the different parts of this elephant without seeing this elephant, they can just define only the points they touch in this elephant. When they cannot define this object as an elephant without a background information, without a perspective, without maybe a theoretical look about this object. So without an active participation to media, without active participation to daily life in this new society, it's not possible, actively engage the whole part of this life. They need some they need to speak the same language. For example, I'm not just talking about technical speaking the same language means they need to understand the same thing with these host societies, from the same things, same jokes. Maybe they need to understand the same things. This will require, media literacy with your definition, with the technical ways. With your definition, yes, engaging in all kind of, all kind of discussions, all kind of news and data actively. This require, media literacy skills. Otherwise, they just maybe become a part of a small part of the societies, and this also, diminish their confidence in their daily life as well. So I think we can turn to Janar now with another question. Janar, do you think does media have the potential to bridge the divide in identity politics, or could it actually deepen social divides for immigrant youth or direct immigrants in their new environments? And you also have some experiences as a foreign researcher in Germany. Based on your own experiences, how can you analyze this issue for us?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but let me start by saying thank you for having me. And I'd like to start with a disclaimer. My expertise is mostly on autocratic politics and dictatorships, and also a little bit of identity politics on the side. So this is not really an expert speaking, and I don't consider myself to be a migrant. I currently live in Germany, and I've been here for a year now. But I have a temporary contract with the university here, and I haven't made up my mind about settling here. So nothing I will say today is coming from an expert or someone who considers himself to be a migrant. But I go through the same experiences with the migrants, nevertheless. So there's that. And I think I will be able to provide some insights. When I received your invitation first, I thought about why do we see more biased content when it comes to immigration? And I think the obvious answer is migrants and refugees are underrepresented in media. There's an African proverb, which is also very famous in Turkish social media. Until the lions learn how to write, every story will glorify the hunter, or something like this. This is not very surprising. But there's also something special about the issue of immigration. Immigrants, refugees, these are very salient issues. These are hot topics. And they have always been among the most salient topics in Europe since 2012, 2013. I think 2014 was the first time when it became the #1 issue in the Eurobarometer. And we have witnessed a lot of changes. We have witnessed, and we are still witnessing, entire party systems being transformed in the West. Social Democrats losing their base, center parties cannot hold, and they are drifting to the right. So these are very salient issues, and they're also very emotional issues. And emotional issues are tricky because they make us prone to mental biases. I mentioned Eurobarometer, and Eurobarometer shows that Europeans tend to overestimate the proportion of immigrants in their country, almost always. And when you ask them about the proportion of legal immigrants to illegal immigrants, again, in most countries, people think that illegal immigrants are more numerous when actually the opposite is true. So that's why the immigration issue is a special one. And naturally, the amount of biased content out there is comparatively higher than other issues. Dr. Lahdili explained how media plays a crucial role in shaping attitudes toward immigration in her opening remarks. And I completely agree with what she said. Some media outlets often frame immigration as a threat to national security, and they will use language that go with that frame, like illegal aliens or, alien invasion. And this is very problematic. It reinforces the perception that migrants are a threat, or, Muslims are terrorists. But I think the bigger issue is the selective reporting. I think it's much more common and it's much more sinister. And it doesn't directly target immigrants, but when you see news about immigrants, there's a high chance that they are about violent events or sexual assaults or something to that effect. And media outlets will claim that they are independent and unbiased, and to say the least, that's BS. I mean, in epistemology, we have this debate whether science can be value-free, and science should be objective, and researchers should not be influenced by their values and their biases. This is a good ideal, but I think it's one that can never be achieved. And if it can't be achieved in science, if even science can't have that quality, how can reporting have? And especially when you are reporting on these emotional, controversial issues. media outlets will claim that they are just presenting facts, but which facts? Even if you are a reporter acting purely on good intentions, you still have time and budget constraints. You can't deliver every relevant fact to the audiences, and you decide on which ones to keep and which ones not to mention. And even this seemingly trivial fact creates a bias, and this is bias by omission. And this is very common. And you will see that some news organizations have a tendency to report on particular topics more than others. And this is especially so with immigration, unfortunately. And there is also another problem I see. Some more liberal, more progressive outlets try to counter this negativity by promoting positive narratives, and some do so exclusively, good vibes only type of reporting. This actually angers the native population more, and it fuels the perception that mainstream media is captured and it cannot be trusted. And this backfires more often than not. Immigrants are not devils, but they are also not angels. They are just human beings, very much like other human beings. If you prick them, they will bleed. If you tickle them, they will laugh. In one of my PhD courses, we had an Iranian policy advocate give us a guest lecture. And she complained a lot about these special stories from Iran published in the Western media. Typically, one reporter comes in and witnesses some nightlife in Tehran. They observe alcohol, and they conclude in their writings that Iranians are human too. And this was the main complaint she had. Iranians, they are doing drugs as well. They have pool parties. They don't all hate America, for instance. Yeah, she was complaining about this, but and asking why does the reporter need to tell that they are human too? I mean, that goes without saying. But I think there's value in it. It's of course very Orientalistic, but I think Western audiences need to hear that. Iranians are human, migrants are human, refugees are human, and we should emphasize that. And much of the problematic coverage regarding migrants or refugees misses this simple fact. I mean, you can remember how Western journalists were talking about Ukrainian refugees when the war just started. Their remarks were really disturbing. Some of them were talking about the way the refugees were dressed. They were middle-class people, unlike refugees from the Middle East, and they looked like Europeans with blue eyes and blonde hair. They could not believe that this was happening to white Europeans. And I don't know why they could not believe that, because Europe is home to the deadliest war in history and to some of the worst crimes against humanity. But yeah, they could not believe it. And there's this pervasive mentality of normalizing violence and tragedies in the Middle East, in Africa, in Latin America. But Europe is just immune to that, according to them. And as if we Middle Easterns are created by God to suffer. The point is we are humans too. I think media should emphasize that we are not devils, we are not angels, we are just humans as European people. Yeah, I'll stop here, but I can expand on this or answer the remaining part of your questions in the second round.
Okay, thank you, Jonas. I think your focus on immigrants, you define them as human beings, not evil or angel. That's very important, I guess, because some media outlets take them evil, some others angel. That's also what bias reporting is, and this maybe lead to construction of dangerous narrative in societies, which make the life of the immigrants very difficult. And when the host societies face any kind of wrong narrative, wrong media news, for example, as you said, selective reporting, when they see a crime, an ordinary crime in any city of Turkey or in Germany, they most probably overreact just because of this dangerous narrative. And that's a very important problem. And I don't think media maybe will have might have a positive role to bridge this identity differences, but and also decrease the role of this dangerous narrative. But in reality, when we just look at the whole media outlets, I don't think they are working just. They are just working to deepen this divide between immigrants and host societies. That's an important problem. And now I have one more question for Nadia Lahtili, and then I will ask one more for you. And then now in this round, you will have 5 minutes to answer these questions. And after that, we can finish our panel. Dr. Lahtili, do you think no, actually, you answered this question. Okay, could you discuss any challenges immigrant youth face in developing media literacy skills, and how these challenges impact their integration into new societies?
Okay, that's actually a good question. But before I get into this, I think that Dr. Janer has touched on very important points. And when he was actually talking, I had this idea about citizen journalism, because, you know, we all know that nowadays media is no longer fulfilling its role of like informing people or just like reporting objectively, but they are trying to manipulate, to persuade, and to direct people into thinking about like specific things. And I think here we can discuss the role of citizen journalism, the fact that we as citizens, we can also uh, report the news, and probably we don't have like the professional skills or yeah these professional platforms as media outlets do, but at least we can correct the narratives around, for example, immigrants and refugees. And when we're talking about the challenges, of course there are many challenges that youth migrants face per year. So when they come to host society, for example, if we speak in the case of Syrians who are mainly Arab-speaking people, like moving to, for example, Turkey or to Europe, so that's the first challenge is language. So learning a new language can be like such a big challenge for them, because as we know, language is the key that opens integration in any society. Um, there are other challenges, for example, having access to technology itself. I see this as like a major challenge that needs to be tackled. For example, people can have the skills, but probably they don't have the rights or they don't have access to technology to tell their own stories. And I'd like also to touch on like the core perspectives that shape the purpose and impact of media literacy. Uh, and maybe like they can be so many purposes, but the three important ones that are related to, I believe, social integration and social participation of youth migrants. We have the like the civic life and democracy aspect. We have also the uh, quality of information as one purpose of media literacy, but also there's this economic drivers. So participation in this context involves several key dimensions that are important for the integration and empowerment of youth migrants in their host societies, and this will also help them to tackle the challenges that they face. And specifically, media literacy education can serve three important purposes that can enhance their visibility and social participation. So we can see like the role of media literacy education in for example, enabling immigrant youths to participate in the knowledge economy, to facilitate their meaningful engagement in democratic process and citizenship, and also in supporting their lifelong learning, cultural expression, and personal fulfillment. So, as we know, we live in a digital world filled with opportunities and challenges. And in this digital world, knowledge isn't just power, but it's also a currency in itself. So for young migrants, um, media literacy is more than a skill they learn, but it's also like a way to uh, actively, confidently, and also wisely participate in the knowledge economy that shapes today's workforce. And these programs, uh, of course, when they're available, don't just teach them the basics, but they can empower them to dive deeper by guiding these young migrants to access information, to analyze information, and to even create their own narratives. I think because one also of the challenges is that these young people, when they don't have access, they don't have the opportunity to tell or to create their own narratives. So, and here comes the role of this media, like directing which kind of narratives they want people to know about them. And with these tools, migrants can learn to decrypt the massive flow of digital content, defining and determining what's valuable and what's misleading, and how uh, they can make their voices heard in a meaningful way. And as the current job market requires more digital skills, uh, I think that people who are capable of handling tools
Nadia,
to
now okay. Nadia, we cannot hear again.
okay.
Could you repeat last 30 seconds? Now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
I said that as the current job market requires more digital skills, so people who are capable of like using these digital platforms, looking beyond the outer layer of information and engaging with digital tools to connect, interact, and to create, are the ones who are well positioned to grab more opportunities. So for young migrants, media literacy is not just about understanding the world around them, but it's also about contributing their own unique perspectives with diverse cultural experiences. And in this way, media literacy is not preparing migrants to compete, but it's actually preparing them to lead and add their voices to the digital marketplace. And beyond providing access to economic opportunities, I think that media literacy education programs help connect young migrants to the center of democratic life, where they can find a sense of belonging and purpose. So imagine a young migrant, despite feeling on the margin, gains the confidence and knowledge to see themselves as an active participant in their host communities. So these media literacy programs become the lens through which they can see, they can understand, and they can also question the world they are living in. And through media literacy programs, immigrant youth can learn that their voice matter, that their voices matter, and that they can learn how to think about the democratic institutions and about the policies that influence their lives. So either we're talking about schools or local councils or national politics, and in doing so, they can gain a deeper understanding of the systems around them, uh, including the systems that may have felt closed off or accessible to them, especially in times or places where anti-immigrant sentiments are strong. And this will also help them develop the ability to identify the bias and distinguish between accurate and misleading information, to stand up against stereotypes, to challenge misinformation, and to reshape the narratives that affect them. And I think that here we can say that media literacy is more about than simply information. It's about agency. It's about encouraging young immigrants to speak up, to participate in civic discourse, to get involved in community initiatives, and to influence decisions that will affect their future. So in this approach, media literacy does more than simply educate them. It transforms them into active citizens who consider themselves valuable, visible actors in the community they live in. And since I am actually researching political participation among the youth, I have come across studies that have shown that youth who engage in media literacy education and who are technologically who are like connected in the digital world, they are more likely to participate in civic activities such as community services. They are more active in political discussions. They are more active in social movements, and I think this can help immigrant youth specifically feel that they are part of the society and be like more active in the civic sphere as well as the political sphere.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as I understand, this media literacy is a two-way process involving both learning and also becoming a part of society. That's maybe the might be this brief summary of your insight. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn to Caner. Caner, we know you studied authoritarianism. That's why I have a question related to your topic. You know, now, not like ancient times, now the reporting and objective of information is no longer prevalent in our life now. So most media outlets are take part in current political divide in those countries. So there are also, so that means as you said in the previous round, they when they're reporting an information, when they're reporting anything, they just do it with in a selective manner. So do you think, and it is also may lead sometimes a security problem for those countries as well. Do you think this shift in media focus is something that governments should intervene in, or does such involvement risk compromising freedom of press?
Yes, great question. I'll combine my answer to this question with the previous questions. You asked about everyday experiences of migrants. For me, I think media bias is not something that can be fixed. Like you cannot get rid of it. It's just something to be aware of. This is like sports. If you are a Galatasaray fan, I'm a Galatasaray fan, so no offense to Galatasaray fans. Everyone will know that you are biased towards Galatasaray. You know, so same thing here. You will complain about the referees and stuff. Same thing here. Like you need to be aware of what the media outlets you follow are biased towards, and we need to make sure that everyone has a minimum degree of media literacy so that they do not believe in everything they see or read. And it's something to be promoted. It's not something that's to be promoted in immigrant communities, but also in the society as a whole. And going back to your first question, I think it relates to this one as well. I need to emphasize this issue of bureaucratic violence. It encapsulates the issue of racism or institutional racism as well. Right now, everywhere in Europe, there are really, really long waiting times for residency applications or work permits. And these processes always require complex documentation and also the knowledge of the local language. So migrants or refugees, they often live in a limbo. They can't go to work or they can't go to school without obtaining the necessary documents. And these delays lead to poverty, financial instability, and all sorts of negative outcomes. I mean, immigration is already hard as it is. You go to a country you don't speak the language of, you don't have friends and family who provide this social safety net. It's really hard. It becomes even harder, it becomes unbearable when you have to deal with long and exhausting processes. And this only not leads to poverty, but also it takes a psychological toll. It is emotionally exhausting and it adds an extra layer of stress. It lays an extra layer of anxiety and frustration. And I can tell you a little bit about my own experience. I came to Germany exactly a year ago to take up a postdoc position here. When you come to Germany first, you need to do your Anmeldung. This is city registration. But, you know, it's the basis of everything, but it takes 2 months. Maybe longer in bigger cities because you cannot find appointments. I was lucky because I went to the government office and waited there for 2 hours before someone with an appointment failed to show up and they processed my registration instead. Then you need to register with the Ausländerbehörde. This is the foreigners office. And I think they changed the name now. It's more friendly, the Office of Migration and Integration, but nothing about the experience is friendly. Some of the people working there will not even speak to you in English, although they are perfectly able to communicate in English. I waited for 3.5 months before my appointment, and in bigger cities again you can wait up to 8 or 9 months just to get an appointment, and then you need to wait another month or so to actually get your residence permit. And some people cannot work without residence permit. Landowners will not rent to them. They cannot open bank accounts. I had to wait 2 weeks before I was able to open a bank account myself, and I missed my first paycheck because of this. Luckily, I had some savings, but not so many migrants do. Yeah, I was lucky in general. I have a doctoral degree. I'm a qualified immigrant, which makes certain things easier. My accommodation is provided by the university, and it's really important nowadays. It is really hard to find a flat. It's harder than finding a job in most cases. And I had colleagues and university staff supporting me, and it was still not easy because some bureaucratic processes are discriminatory, either by design or through practice of the officials. I got the postdoc offer from my current university in May 2023, and they wanted me to start 2 months later. But I was able to start 7 months later. And that's because there was simply no appointments available at the German consulate in Istanbul. And again, I am lucky because the professors I work with did not withhold the job offer. But many people who faced this situation, they lost their dream jobs. Long story short, bureaucratic violence is real. Even the qualified immigrants with desired degrees are not immune to it. And this can have very severe consequences. Dr. Lahtili mentioned some of them in her opening remarks again. When you face with prejudice treatment, when you face social exclusion and marginalization, this is the recipe for radicalization. This is something that that should be avoided at all costs. Yeah.
Thank you, Caner. I think now we come to the end of today's panel. I would like to thank both of you. And I think we engage, we have truly insightful discussion on media integration and the challenge of bias reporting. with your last experiences also give us additional additional knowledge on this issue. And thank you both of you.
Thank you too.
I think our today's discussion must remind everybody that as media consumers, creators, policymakers, or academics, we all share the same responsibility, I guess. Whether it's through promoting media literacy, encouraging balanced narratives, or simply being mindful of the impact our words. We each have a part of play in building a more inclusive, informed, and connected society, I think. Once again, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our panelists, Dr. Nadia Lahtiri and Dr. Caner Şimşek, for sharing their knowledge and perspectives. Thank you all for your attention and also your contributions. So I think now we can finish our panel. Do you want to add something more, or shall we finish?
Well,
I
one little
actually...
piece of advertising. Sorry, please go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Dr. Caner.
Yeah, I like to echo some of the findings of the recent work I do, and I think they are relative. In Europe, the open racism is still very widespread, but it's becoming more subtle, more and more subtle. And in my experience, racism mostly comes from working class people, unfortunately. And in the ERC project I'm currently working on, we analyze survey data, and we consistently find that the poor and the less educated exhibit lower levels of political trust. They are less satisfied with democracy, and they actually have a different notion of democracy compared to the liberal ideal that European Union promotes. So there is also the other side of the story, if you will. In the other side, people are losing their jobs. They are forced to live in precarious conditions. They are facing inequalities, and these are the local populations of Europe. And if we want democracy or migration or globalization to work, all of these processes must improve substantial outcomes for the entire population. Not just for the selected few, but also for the masses who are currently losing out. And all the populist victories that we witnessed, and we witnessed a big one in the US recently, it's just pointing out that democracy should work for everyone. And if you want to fight with prejudice, if you want to fight against biases, we also need to fight against poverty, fight against inequalities everywhere. I just wanted to say this.
Thank you, Caner.
Yes.
Nadia,
thank you, Dr. Caner. Thank you for discussing this, as I said earlier, like a timely and interesting topic. And I also would like to thank Dr. Caner for sharing his personal experience. And I think that he raised like an important point on the fact of recognizing that migrants are heterogeneous groups with diverse backgrounds and experiences. And I believe that we should take a multi-stakeholder approach. We should include different actors, including civil society, and that we have to create policies that empower and support young migrants to help them adapt to their new environments. And as I have said, we should look at them as not just passive actors, but as active actors who can contribute to their society. That's also very important. But I think like now with all the things that we are seeing, I see like we have learned that democracy is actually the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. But what I see now is actually a democracy that is by the politicians, for the politicians, and from the politicians. I hope that, as I said, we can promote like an inclusive policy making environment and include people who are actually concerned. If we want to like set policies for migration and integration, we should look at the specific needs of migrants themselves and include them in the policy making process. So yeah, this would be like my final thoughts on this.
Thank you very much. I think now we can finish our panel. I'd like to say something for our audience. We are Turkey Research Foundation, and I think we are doing a good job in last 1 year about for Turkish politics and also any political issue all around the world. And this European Union funded project, and we now finished the 9th panel in this project. We have just one left, and hopefully we're gonna do the similar works in the future. I would like to say for our audience, stay tuned and continue following our works from our websites and or social media accounts and on X or Instagram. That's all. That's everything that I would like to say. Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.